Welcome to this Friday edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha. Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you, and our big focus continues to be on the deteriorating India-Canada ties. To say that India-Canada ties have plumbed the depths in recent days may be an understatement. Every day, the tensions seem to escalate, and new facts coming to light don't help matters. A report by America-based CBS News says that Indian diplomats in Canada were under surveillance for a long time. According to the report, the Canadian government has amassed both human and signals intelligence in a months-long investigation into the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, which has inflamed the country's relations with India. That intelligence includes communications involving Indian officials and Indian diplomats present in Canada. The report, which quotes Canadian government sources, further says the intelligence did not come solely from Canada. Some of it was provided by an unnamed ally in the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. The Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance includes the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand and Canada. It's not clear which of these five countries is being referred to. In other words, Canada was spying on Indian diplomats. The report claims that Nijjar had been warned by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service that he was at risk. Nijjar was shot dead outside a Gurudwara in the British Columbia province of Canada in June this year. The report further states that Canada's National Security and Intelligence Advisor, Jodie Thomas, was in India for 4 days in August and again for 5 days this month. And this particular visit overlapped with a tense meeting between Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the G20 summit in New Delhi. Canada has made the allegation that the Indian government was involved in Nijjar's killing. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was a Canadian citizen. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who first made the allegations in the Canadian Parliament on Monday, has said he stands by his remarks. Speaking in New York, where world leaders are attending the UN General Assembly, Trudeau said, and I quote, "I can assure you that the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons was not done lightly. It was done with utmost seriousness." However, neither Trudeau nor his government have released any evidence to back these claims, which India has rejected as absurd and politically motivated. In fact, in a hard-hitting press conference on Thursday, India's External Affairs Ministry said Canada was becoming a safe haven for terrorists and asked Ottawa to take action against those who have terrorism charges against them or send them to India to face justice. Amid the diplomatic standoff, India has suspended its visa services for Canadians, citing security threats that were disrupting the work of its officials, and asked Canada to reduce its diplomatic presence in New Delhi. Earlier, the two countries had announced tit-for-tat expulsions of each other's diplomats and issued travel advisories to their respective citizens. Meanwhile, there is another report in the Financial Times which says that US President Joe Biden and other leaders who are Canadian allies expressed concern to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G20 summit about these Canadian claims. The publication states that several members of the Five Eyes raised the issue with Prime Minister Modi and that Biden felt it was important to raise the issue directly with his Indian counterpart. This after Trudeau broached the matter with these countries. Responding to questions about this controversy, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has said the US is in touch with Indians at the highest levels with regard to this case. He added that Washington is giving India no special exemption in the matter. Interestingly, Sullivan also said, "I firmly reject the idea that there is a wedge between the United States and Canada over this issue." Analysts say this situation has put some Western nations in a tough position as Canada has been a long-standing partner and ally, while those countries are also seeking to build strong ties with New Delhi to counter the influence of China in the Asia-Pacific region. Let's now turn our attention to Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the man whose killing has sparked the diplomatic row between India and Canada. Nijjar had been designated a terrorist by India in 2020. He was accused of supporting terror attacks in Punjab. India had even sought his extradition in 2022 after he was linked to the killing of a Hindu priest in Punjab. But like on every other occasion, Canada turned down India's extradition request. And it gets worse. Nijjar, who founded the separatist organization, the Khalistan Tiger Force, which is banned in India, was granted Canadian citizenship just months after an Interpol Red Corner notice was issued against him. Let's remember, once a Red Corner notice is issued by Interpol against an individual, a country is bound to arrest and deport that individual to their home country. Of course, Canada did no such thing, quite the opposite in fact. Meanwhile, Canadian tourists and business travelers are rushing to change flights and inquire about their trip deposits after India suspended visa applications in the country. India's move means most Canadians will not be able to travel to India if they do not already have an Indian visa. Let's now bring you up to speed on another interesting development, which may explain to some extent why Justin Trudeau is acting the way he is. Amid escalating tensions between India and the Trudeau government, a new Ipsos poll has revealed that the majority of Canadians now want the Canadian Prime Minister to step down. The survey revealed that only 31% of Canadians now prefer him as their leader, while 40% are throwing their weight behind the Conservative heavyweight and the principal opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre. Ipsos CEO Darryl Bricker said this gap shows the Conservatives could form a majority government if an election was held in Canada today. While Justin Trudeau maintains that he will lead his Liberal Party into the next elections, a whopping 60% of Canadians believe he should think otherwise. Tonight on Global Lens, we are looking at where India-Canada relations currently stand and whether they're poised to go further south in the days and weeks ahead.
Government of India to work with us, to take seriously these allegations and to allow justice to follow its course. There are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. That is something of the utmost and foundational importance in a country of rule of law, in a world where international rules-based order matters. We have a rigorous and independent justice system and robust processes that will follow their course. And we call upon the government of India to engage with us to move forward on getting to the truth of this matter. As a country of the rule of law, we have an obligation to ensure that those processes unfold in a rigorous and independent manner, and that is what we are ensuring. At the same time, we are ensuring that Canadians stay protected and that we stand up for the international rules-based order. That is something that we are doing, and it's something we are doing alongside our allies. We're standing up for the rules-based order. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're highlighting how unacceptable it would be for any country to be involved in the killing of a citizen on their own home soil. And that's something we will continue to stand for. I think it's extremely important that as a country with a strong and independent justice system, we allow those justice processes to unfold themselves with the utmost integrity. But I can assure you, the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons Monday morning was not done lightly. It was done with, or Monday afternoon, was done with the utmost seriousness.
We heard from the Canadian Prime Minister publicly about the allegations. We went out publicly ourselves and expressed our deep concern about them, our support for a law enforcement process to get to the bottom of exactly what happened and to ensure that the perpetrators are held accountable. I'm not going to get into the substance of private diplomatic conversations, but we are in constant contact with our Canadian counterparts. We are consulting with them closely. We support the efforts that they are undertaking in this investigation, and we have also been in touch with the Indian government as well. And I will leave it at that for today, only to say that I have seen in the press some efforts to try to drive a wedge between the United States and Canada on this issue, and I firmly reject the idea that there is a wedge between the U.S. and Canada. We have deep concerns about the allegations, and we would like to see this investigation carried forward and the perpetrators held to account. That is what the United States has stood for from the moment this emerged in public, and we will continue to stand for that until this fully plays its way out.
All right, so where do India-Canada ties currently stand, and where are they headed from here? Let's analyze these major developments with our panel of experts. Joining me on Global Lens tonight, Yashovardhan Azad, former Special Director of the Intelligence Bureau, former diplomat Ambassador Suresh Goyal, and completing the panel tonight is former diplomat Ambassador KP Fabian. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the show. Yashovardhan Azad, let me start with you. As a quick reminder for our viewers, the CBS News report that we are quoting says that the Canadian government has amassed both human and signals intelligence in a months-long investigation into the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The report, which quotes Canadian government sources, further says the intelligence did not come solely from Canada. Some of it was provided by an unnamed ally in the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. And the intelligence that they claim to have includes communications involving Indian officials and Indian diplomats present in Canada. The bottom line seems to be Canada spied on Indian diplomats. What do you make of these spy games, Yashovardhan Azad?
Well, I'm really surprised that on a public platform, the president accepts the fact that surveillance was being done on the diplomatic community, which I think is in itself, I think, the gravest, what you call, mockery of law, international law. Having said that, I'm surprised that Nijjar, which were Khalistani terrorists, was killed on 18th of June. And mind you, before that, just a year back, Ripudaman Malik was killed again in a gang war. And just after Nijjar, just now, recently, another one, Shardul, has been killed, who's again stated to be killed in inter-gang rivalry of the Khalistani terrorists. Now, despite this, the reported version of Nijjar's murder was that there were two masked gunmen who shot at him, and there was another guy who helped them. Now, in these last 3.5 months, according to the statement of the foreign minister, nobody has been apprehended, and she's said that on a public platform that we are searching for the truth. But by the time they were searching for the truth, our diplomat was expelled. So what it means is they have already arrived at a conclusion without completing their investigation. I also heard, and this being aired on the public platform, that much of the so-called evidence which has been gathered cannot be put up in the court, but the friendly countries have been alerted, the Five Eyes, G7, etc., etc. I'm surprised that Canada, whose side is not very well represented in terms of taking action against the Khalistani terrorists, is so concerned about the death of Nijjar and has made such accusations without actually presenting concrete evidence. I'm not aware, I'm not privy to the kind of evidence they are talking about. They're talking about electronic evidence, which obviously means snooping. They have talked about meetings, etc., in Canada, which obviously again means that they are being physically trailed. If this is what the Canadian police or the Canadian government is doing, then I'm afraid our diplomats who are in this panel will have a lot to say. Lastly, the point which I want to make is that given the airing of this kind of allegations on a public platform at the United Nations will have very, very deep ramifications across the world, because these allegations will become a part and parcel of diplomacy, of a foreign policy, which is going to put us in extremely sensitive situations with our friends too. So it's extremely unfortunate. We still don't have any evidence that they are talking about. And I think it's a grave charge which has been made, which should not have been without any shred of evidence.
Absolutely. I think it would be safe to say that Justin Trudeau, with his reckless behavior, has not only dealt a body blow to India-China ties, but these ties have actually hit rock bottom. Ambassador Suresh Goyal, if I could come to you, as has been rightly pointed out by Yashovardhan Azad, and this is the question we've been asking on Global Lens for days now. Mr. Justin Trudeau, where is the evidence to back your wild charges that you've made publicly against India? No answers have been forthcoming. He's been asked again and again, including at a recent press conference that he addressed in New York. He claims he stands by his remarks. First, he calls them credible allegations. Next, he says credible reasons to believe India's involvement. But when asked for evidence, the man has nothing to say. The Trudeau government has absolutely nothing to share, either with the Indian government or with the public in general. This, even as he desperately reaches out to his Western allies, tries to drag the United States into this issue, and the United Kingdom and Australia and the other countries. And on top of all of that, we now know, thanks to the CBS report, that our diplomats in Canada were placed under surveillance. They were being trailed, and very interestingly, Canada's National Security and Intelligence Advisor Jody Thomas was in India for 4 days in the month of August and for 5 days in the month of September, and this last visit happened at the time when Justin Trudeau had a very tense and awkward meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the high-profile G20 summit here in New Delhi. I mean, what was that top intelligence officer even doing in New Delhi, especially at a sensitive time like that? Just what are these games, Ambassador Goyal, that Canada has been playing?
I wish I could talk about the games. I have no first-hand knowledge about the games that Canada is playing. When we are in the service, we all know that we need to be aware of these kind of games being played by the host governments when we are working in the missions abroad. These are part of the usual activities of any diplomatic mission. And therefore, I would rather refrain from talking about what Canada has done, what Canada has been doing, and snooping on the diplomats. We are aware of all those things, and these things happen. I think, Neha, the more important point from my perspective would be not that Trudeau thought that there are credible allegations or there are credible reasons to think, etc., etc., etc. That is not the point. The point really here is what made Trudeau take the kind of a step that he took, even when I'm quite sure there will be never any firm evidence in these matters. Conspiracies are very, very difficult to prove. You can impute, you can speculate, but you cannot prove. What made Trudeau take the kind of step that he took on the floor of the parliament, accusing a government with which it had, I'm not even calling it a friendly government anymore, accusing a government of a country with which it has very substantive relations of both economy, people's movement, students, education, etc., etc. And why did it do what it did? If at all it is true that there were consultations between the USA, between Biden and Trudeau when they were in Delhi, and that so-and-so happened, and he shared the information with them. Why did he do so? Is there actually more to this than we can see? Is he planning to actually turn the apple cart? Why is he trying to do that? And I think that is where the answers will be. I do not think that Trudeau would take that kind of a step lightly unless he felt so humiliated or so slighted that he didn't care anymore, or unless he felt that he's going to be losing in any case. But before he loses, he will do whatever he can to turn a country with good relations, substantive relations down like this. I don't know why even his father, when he was the prime minister, when he took action, he never went to the extent of what this chap has done. Either he's immature, whatever it is. But I think we have to basically get to the bottom of to see where all this is leading up to in terms of G7 dynamics, in terms of Five Eyes dynamics, in terms of NATO and G20. Neha.
That is an important question you raise, for sure. Ambassador Fabian, many would agree that Justin Trudeau has taken things way too far, publicly making wild allegations against a fellow democracy without presenting any substantiating evidence to support those claims. And on top of that, as has been reported by the Financial Times, Justin Trudeau took up this matter with the United States, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, that are part of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. And he wanted all these leaders to actually make a public comment on this matter during the G20 summit. All those leaders refused to do that. But now we're in a situation where the Australian Prime Minister and the American President say that they are keeping an eye on these developments. They take this matter seriously. The National Security Advisor of the United States says no special exemption is being granted to India in this particular case. He even said in that press conference, I firmly reject the idea that there is a wedge between the United States and Canada on this issue. What should we make of all this, sir? What is Justin Trudeau playing at? And the fact that he's not confined it to, a diplomatic war with India, he's trying to drag the G7 nations into this. He's trying to drag the Five Eyes into this.
Well, I believe that Justin Trudeau acted in haste. But then, because, as already pointed out, they say that the investigation is not completed yet. So, that he acted in haste is more or less clear. But then we have to ask, why did he act in haste? Well, some reasons have been given by previous speakers, but to my mind, probably the main reason why he acted in haste is that, Canadian intelligence has some evidence, not conclusive evidence, but has some evidence pointing the needle of suspicion towards, one of our officers posted in Canada. And you mentioned about the CBS interview, CBS, explanation. I also listened to it, and I also read some Canadian papers, and it is hinted that the foreign agency which did the snooping of conversations between Indian diplomats and others is probably the United States. In other words, Justin Trudeau has some evidence, not conclusive evidence, but he acted in haste, and to my mind, that is because his government survival depends on support from Jagmeet Singh, New Democratic Party, NDP. Now, Jagmeet is an open, staunch supporter of Khalistan. So, for Trudeau, I suppose it was a matter of survival. And as you yourself mentioned, his political ground is slipping. So, that is probably why he did it. But let me also say that we in India have not acted in the matter in the right way. Because when Trudeau mentioned this to our Prime Minister, he could have said, I categorically reject any suggestion that India had anything to do with it. But since, Mr. Prime Minister, you claim to have evidence, okay, share it with us. Let my professionals examine the evidence and we will come back to you. In which case, since we haven't done anything, we have had nothing to do with this matter, after a certain lapse of time, after examining the evidence given by the Canadians, we could have told the whole world, well, we listened to the Canadians, They produce some evidence. We have seen the evidence, and we can tell you that there is nothing in what has been produced, and we had nothing to do with it. That would have been a smarter move. Now, there is one more mistake which India is making, and that is India is conflating two issues. One is, these referenda which Khalistanis have been holding. We all know that in 1995, Quebec, there was a referendum whether it should remain with Canada or not. In other words, it is not illegal in Canada to hold a referendum. And these private referenda, that was an official one, these private referenda which these Khalistanis are holding, well, I think it will be better for us to ignore them, because it's only when we sort of take note of it that these referenda get any media significance.
Okay, but can I just come in there, Ambassador Fabian? I don't disagree with the larger point you're making about how India could have handled it. But so with due respect, India's concern is not confined to just these so-called referendums that are being held. These are elements that have openly been holding anti-India rallies. They have been painting a target on the back of India's diplomats in Canada. They have openly called for violence against our diplomats. There are posters we've seen that have been plastered all over with pictures and names of our diplomats, including our high commissioners, saying that these are wanted men. They have celebrated the assassination of our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. We all know about the circumstances under which she was killed. Now, when you incite violence, when you call for violence against the diplomats of another country, that is not freedom of expression, because that is the defense that Justin Trudeau has been using. And not only that, sir, let me bring your attention and the attention of our viewers to another few important facts related to this man called Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And I want your comments on that, Yashovardhan Azad. This man who's killing, Canada is beating its chest over. Who was this man? He had been designated a terrorist by India in 2020. He was accused of supporting terror attacks in Punjab. India had sought his extradition in 2020 after he was linked to the killing of a Hindu priest in Punjab. But like on multiple other occasions, Canada turned down India's extradition request in this case as well. And Yashovardhan Azad, it gets worse. Nijjar, who as we know founded the separatist organization, the Khalistan Tiger Force, which is banned in India, was granted a Canadian citizenship months after an Interpol Red Corner notice was issued against him. This is not how democracies behave.
No, absolutely right. In fact, Nijjar had gone there and as a refugee, and then he applied for Canadian citizenship. In fact, he married there to get that, and yet he was not given the citizenship. Later on, he somehow got it. That is the same case of Shardul, who went in 2017-18. Let me also tell you, Neha, that there are 21 wanted guys still in, still by the NIA, who are in Canada. And NI has a mountain of dossiers against them. Time and again, these dossiers have been shared with the Canadian authorities, but none of them have been extradited or handed back to us. In fact, a very interesting point is that Nijjar's life would have been saved perhaps if he would have been facing trial in India, because there was a reward of 10 lakhs on him. And the Red Corner notice, as you said, had already been given to the Canadian authorities. By the way, Shardul, who was killed in Winnipeg a few days back, had a similar kind of a record. The other thing which I would like to focus on is that there have been death threats to our diplomats in Canada. That's a very, very serious matter.
Exactly.
Canada has got a law against hate crimes and also incitement. And I would also like to point out, when there was a trucker strike in Canada took very, very strict action against them. But when the Indian authorities have complained about these slogans with Khalistani terrorists which they are putting up everywhere,
then it's freedom of speech for them.
Yes, that is freedom of speech. And Mr. Trudeau himself had gone to for a function in 2017 where they were openly eulogizing the Khalistani terrorists. So in this, if you see the scenario, I think India was virtually pushed to this. For the last 40 years, in fact, this has been similarly going on. And that is why you will see that there are hardly any visits, state visits from our side to Canada. So I think we are precariously placed as far as the relations go. Yes, and I will again stress this point, you don't snoop around diplomats of friendly countries. No, this is a very serious issue. And whether the Prime Minister is facing internal problems there or not, it is not our business. He is the Prime Minister, and when he makes a statement, he should take full responsibility for it.
I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Azad. To think that, you know, our diplomats were placed under surveillance here, perhaps it is time for India to register a counter-protest with Canada over this issue. You know, and Ambassador Goyal, if I could come back to you at this point, you know, of course, Yashwardhan Azad is right in pointing this out, and we've been reporting this for days now on Global Lens. According to Indian agencies, there are at least 9 pro-Khalistan organizations that have been operating freely from Canadian soil for years and years together. Babbar Khalsa, Khalistan Tiger Force, Sikhs for Justice, so on and so forth. Multiple dossiers have been handed over to Canadian authorities with concrete evidence of their involvement in multiple crimes and illegal activities, including murders, including killings in Punjab, terror activities in Punjab. None of this is freedom of speech. If you're going to threaten our diplomats, call for violence against them, then that is not freedom of speech, as Justin Trudeau puts it. But here's a country which continues to look the other way. And at the end of the day, Justin Trudeau is somebody who's actually seen as not just a sympathizer, but as an active supporter of these elements who've not only been voting for him over the years, but as has been pointed out, some of them are actually part of his government. What does that make him if not an active supporter and enabler of anti-India forces?
Neha, the point really here is not the reality or not what the truth is as we know it. The point really here is that for many decades, and not just this decade, for more than 30 or 40 years, we have seen Canada acting against the interest of India. Please remember, in 1974, when we had the nuclear explosion, they stopped the supply of enriched uranium to our Tarapur plant. Kanishka bombing, where more than 290 Canadian citizens died in the bombing. And despite the fact that they had information beforehand, Palwal was involved in this, they knew that credible evidence about who are going to do what, and they didn't take any action. The point is not the truth. The point really here is, why is Canadian government doing this? And if they're doing this despite our protests, despite our views, sensitivities known to them, what do we do? It's clear that they take shelter behind their freedom of expression, their justice system, etc., etc., etc. But have we tried to create within Canada, and all embassies can do it, they try to create a movement within those countries in favor of their own interests? What prevents our mission in Canada to get together a few people who are sympathetic to the Indian cause and write to the Canadian government? We haven't done that so far. What prevents us to really start our own processions acting against the Sikhs? And how I can tell you for a fact, I know many people there, 95% of the Sikhs in Canada have no interest in this Khalistan movement. They have gone there for economic opportunity. They went illegally, right? But they are waiting to get their permanent car, PR shape, and continue to engage their economic activities. So I can assure you that this is all basically a political figment, a fig leaf which is being used. I think we should really also define our approach in terms of dealing with this thing. We have seen that protesting is not going to help. Do you think we don't keep an eye on the Canadian diplomats in India? We do. That's okay. It's all part of the trade. But the point really here is, why can't we have demonstrations outside the Canadian High Commission here in Delhi? Why should they feel so secure in Delhi that our properties are being attacked? There is fire, there is arson, there are threats issued against our people, while Canadian diplomats here in Delhi, in India, they continue to operate freely and very happily and very safely. So I think we need to redefine our strategy so that Canadian government understands that there is a cost to this kind of a behavior, and the cost will be on their side also, frankly speaking. And as far as G7, etc., are concerned, we need to work with them and let them know where the balance of the interests lie. Yeah.
I think that is very interestingly put. While India has taken some strong retaliatory measures in the last few days, such as suspending its visa services in Canada, asking Canada to reduce its diplomatic presence here in India, we've seen tit-for-tat diplomatic expulsions and travel advisories, but maybe we need to now act more proactively and redefine our strategy. And yes, if Justin Trudeau can, go running to the United States and some of his other allies, what stops India from presenting evidence of these Khalistani elements and their involvement in terror activities in India to our, friends in the United States, for example, and other countries? We have friendly ties. We have great ties with these countries, don't we? We can do the same. It's a game that two can play. And since Ambassador Goyal, talked about how majority of Sikhs do not support this nonsense of this so-called Khalistan movement, I think it is just the right cue for me to share with our viewers the findings of a recent survey that was done. Let's have that graphic up on the screen before I go back to Ambassador Fabian. There was a survey done recently by Pew Research Center. What does it tell us? It says 95% of Sikhs are proud of their Indian identity. They're proud to be Indian. 78% consider communal violence to be a major issue and therefore obviously do not support it, endorse it or condone it in any way. 70% of Sikhs said that anyone who disrespects India cannot be a Sikh. That's what they said. If you disrespect India, you cannot be a Sikh. 52% said we have a lot in common with Hindus. They're not like this terrorist Panoon who's threatening Hindus in Canada, asking them to leave Canada and go back to India. 40% of these Sikhs said they visit Gurudwaras every day. 18% of them said they face discrimination in the last 1 year. But what is the bottom line? 95% say they are proud to be Indian and do not support any of the violence that is associated with this separatist movement. Let me go back to Ambassador Fabian at this point. Ambassador Fabian, you said earlier that the Prime Minister of India could have had a different response to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. While he did reject the allegations, he could have said, we will look into your allegations. At the same time, Ambassador Suresh Goyal says it is time for India to become more proactive and to develop a coherent counter strategy to deal with this challenge that we've faced in Canada for a very long time. Is that something you would agree with?
Well, certainly we should have a better strategy. But if I may go back for a second, Justin Trudeau's use of the argument about freedom of expression is not, it doesn't hold water. But the point I was making was totally different. And that is that a Canadian citizen has every right to publicly support Khalistan. And we cannot ask Canada to take action against them. But no Canadian citizen and no one on Canadian soil can attack or threaten India's diplomatic missions or Indian citizens or Indian entities there. There, Canada is bound to act under the Vienna Convention. Now, sometimes when we speak, and I mean it, we sort of conflate the two issues. After conducting the referendum, they came and demonstrated and almost attacked the consulate. So that is where I think we have to be careful. Now, coming to the question I think this is being left out in most of the discussions. What is important is to de-escalate, because it is going to hurt India as well as Canada. You mentioned about suspension of visa. Let me tell you, 80,000 tourist arrivals from Canada in 2021.
Yes.
So, can we stop issuing visa? And one more thing, how logical we are. We said that we have stopped issuing visa for security reasons. Now tell me, for issuing e-visa, do you have to go to the office? Didn't we issue e-visa during the COVID time? So, and then we also have said that a Canadian passport holder cannot get an Indian visa even in a third country. So in other words, security reason was not the real reason. It was an attempt to punish, to show anger. I think we should speak with better logic.
But to be
Now,
fair,
final
sir,
thought.
I hate to interrupt you. To be fair, do you not believe, sir, India does have the right to be angry, and it does have the right to express its anger? And
Well,
these are diplomatic means that are available to us that we have decided to exercise.
Well, let me tell you that anger is not the best guide to good diplomacy. And the last point I want to make is that instead of escalating, let us think of de-escalating. And both India and Canada should stop talking at each other through the media. And second step is they should appoint a special representative they can meet at a neutral place without the media glare and come out with a compromise at referendum to their respective governments. This is very important rather than escalate. Showing anger, well, as I said, it is human, it is natural, but I don't think it's the best part of diplomacy.
Sir, I do not disagree with you that de-escalation is the need of the hour. The question is, how do you bounce back from where we are right now? Because I think thanks to Trudeau's recklessness, India-Canada ties have hit rock bottom. Just a year ago, it would have been inconceivable that, you know, there would be this sort of a situation where we would be expelling each other's diplomats and asking for, you know, another country's, for Canada's mission here to be downsized and for the visa services to be suspended. I think this would have been inconceivable just a year ago. But Ambassador Goyal, couple of questions to you, sir. Number one, I want to quickly point out to you and the viewers the findings of this recent Ipsos poll that suggests that a majority of Canadians want Justin Trudeau to actually step down as Prime Minister. Only 31% prefer him as their leader. 40% are throwing their weight behind his Conservative opponent. And the CEO of Ipsos, the agency that carried out this survey, says the gap shows that the Conservatives would actually form a majority government if an election were to be held in Canada today. And Justin Trudeau is on record as saying, of course, I'm going to lead the Liberal Party into the next election. A whopping 60% of Canadians seem to believe he needs to rethink that. Do you believe this is part of the reason, as was pointed out by Ambassador Fabian earlier, why Justin Trudeau is acting in such a reckless manner? That's question number one. Question number two, of course, there should be de-escalation. How do we dig ourselves out of this hole? Frankly, Justin Trudeau started this diplomatic war.
Very short answer to the two of them. First of all, I think Trudeau might have started the whole thing this time basically to get election sympathy. It might have been the case, but clearly he has not been able to gain much because of this factor. And hopefully next year we would have a Conservative Prime Minister who will see things in a different manner. The thing that is needed to really restore the situation to before Trudeau is for Trudeau to go. I hope it happens next year, because I don't see any really possibility if Trudeau were to really apologize, and if not to apologize, at least to go back to really making some attempt to restore relations, things might work out, but I don't see him doing it. Number two, in terms of our own attempt at de-escalation, I think de-escalation is possible, provided Canada does take some action on the terrorist modules in Canada and on threats against the Indian High Commission and consulate properties. But again, I don't see that happening before the next state election. So all said and done, while we keep on making all kinds of things and we keep on activating people within Canada to write to the minister, to write to the government, to raise objections, to raise concerns about what is happening there in terms of these Khalistani elements, they should keep on doing that. Take out the jalousies, take out the processions. In the meantime, patiently, without getting angry again, Neha, wait till next year. Wait till next year. Yes.
Okay, so drop your anger and wait till next year. I would have to agree with you, the Ambassador Goel. Perhaps Justin Trudeau's ouster as Prime Minister of Canada would bring huge relief to India and Canada ties. There are some who have pointed out that the problem is not between India and China. The problem is actually between Justin Trudeau. I beg your pardon, did I just say China? The problem is not between India and Canada, the problem is between Justin Trudeau and India. And also, yes, I agree with you, gentlemen, there should be de-escalation, but let's be very clear, we didn't start the fire. On that note, Yashovardhan Azad, Ambassador Suresh Goel, Ambassador KP Fabian, thank you so much for your time and perspective on this show. All right, on that note, let's slip into a quick break here on Global Lens. There's more on the other side. Stay with us.
मैं इमरान अहमद खान नियाजी सबके दिल से हल्फ उठाता हूँ।
When Imran Khan came initially